Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the final session of today's workshop stage. I'm so happy to introduce you to Stuart and Simon from Advanced Supply Chain. We will have a really great session talking about efficiency and how to help us retailers to work easier and get our stuff done. If you have any questions, there will be a Q&A at the end of it, so keep your questions. We'll come back to them. If not, I get to ask a bunch of questions because I'm a curious person. I will let the floor to you. Please introduce yourselves, have fun, and have a good time, crowd.
Okay, hi guys, thanks for attending. I'm Stuart Greenfield, I'm the Sales Director for Advanced Supply Chain. I've been with the business for about 5 years and got a background in end-to-end supply chain for the last 20 years.
Hi guys, pleasure to see and not hear you, but at least see you. I'm Simon, I'm VP Sales for Europe. I'm still quite young with the company, only joined some 7 months ago, but I've been in logistics for more than 20 years.
Today what we're going to talk about is how can we drive efficiency and speed to market of products whilst prioritising sustainability. Obviously sustainability is becoming more and more prevalent within the supply chain, and it's looking to see what we can do to maximise sustainability whilst making sure your products are in the right place at the right time. So advanced supply chain as overall, we ship over 300 million products around the world through multiple different retailers and brands. Our background historically has been in fashion, working with companies like ASOS, Lacoste, PLT, and many, many more brands. We put innovative solutions in place for our customers through bespoke supply chain software to make sure that we can support a wide range of omnichannel solutions, including pick and pack fulfillment, replenishment, value-added services, and returns. As a business, why are we well placed to talk to you around sustainability? It's because we're part of a larger group called Reconomy. And Reconomy are all around being a circular economy specialists. Within the group, you can see we have lots of different companies that look at different areas of sustainability, with 3 different loops that look after comply, with the likes of Valpak, who look at what products go into the market, what is your packaging that's going in, what is so you can record all the data for waste and for EPR regulations moving forward. We have companies like ourselves, which sits in the reuse division with myself and Advanced, and Rebound returns, front-end of returns portal and return solutions on a global scale. And then we also have the recycling division, where we look at recycling products and what we can do for end of life and management of different solutions, making products into new products, and end of life management of plastics into plastic bags through the likes of Eurocay, and EcoVend with the take back scheme for taking old plastic bottles into vending machines to give vouchers to then spend within stores.
So what do we want to touch upon today? And we want to look at the retail supply chain and the 3 priorities faced currently and what we've experienced in the last years and months. One, of course, is the cost pressure and market volatility. So the cost of living crisis has hit us all, and it remains something that we have to understand the impact that it's having. We have experienced many disruptions in the last years, and it began with COVID. It went over the Ever Given, the Red Sea crisis. So there are a lot of disruptions to our and your supply chains, which just trigger rising costs on every module of the supply chain. There's the second priority, which is the shopper. Yeah? He demands much more speed. And at the same time, with the demand for speed, he also wants it to be more convenient. And surveys show that 2 from 3 shoppers actually want speed. And that's something we have to take care of and to help. And from those 2 from 3, 50% will not order on that same shop if they see that there's no speed or that a delivery has been delayed. So that's a big point to discuss. And last, but certainly not least, we're looking at a net zero circular economy, which is in all of our minds because we all are responsible for the environment. And instead of fueling globalization without having economic or just looking into sustainability, that's a thing of the past. We have to look for the future and start acting now. And consumers are reacting to that and are starting to prioritize anything around sustainability during their purchase decisions. And that's something we have to look after and really react to. And of course, we have so many new legislations coming in Europe in regards to online sales. And I think that's something we as a logistics service provider would also be where we need to consult you.
Is working. Didn't work that time. So, as Simon said, there is a lot of new legislation around sustainability, packaging requirements, EPR that's coming in place across Europe over the next few years, and we will see it to increase pace. EPR is a massive issue, and we know that there's different regulations in different countries. Italy is now has just launched EPR. And for those that don't understand what EPR is, extended producer responsibility. It's the responsibility of the producers, the retailers, the manufacturers, of the products that they're putting into market, of how that product will eventually come out the market. So encouraging products to be recycled, reused, repaired, and instead of going to waste. So it's looking at how we can actually manage those solutions for people. The biggest challenge with it is, like we said before, different regulations in different countries, different responsibilities, and no clear guidance of when these different regulations will be put in different countries. We're starting to see now more traction is coming through, and we will start to hear what is going to be put in place. We're talking about packaging EPRs will be in place in the UK from January 2025. European EPRs expected within 18 months. So we're keeping our finger on the pulse of what's changing in each of the different markets. And it's very, very key for us to work with our retailers to put plans in place, not in 18 months' time. It's now. It's now looking at what solutions we can put in place, start keeping people at the forefront of their mind of what solutions that they can put in place, joining consortiums, different EPR companies that we were working with across Europe to make sure that those solutions are in place for when those different legislations are put in.
So these are the big challenges, and all three are happening parallel to each other. So the retailers have to address the rising cost and tackle margin dilution all over the board. They have to look at their competition. They have to take care of a more complex supply chain than ever before, and again, improved speed to market. So those three challenges all run parallel, which makes it extremely difficult to focus on one or two, because basically we see that you have to focus on all three. And that's where we would then move in just to assist and consult in those areas.
So, like we said, the focus on the key three areas, and we're going to touch on the three of them today through different solutions that we put in place. The first one we're talking about is how to optimize your inbound and outbound and product availability. This is very much around making sure you've got, like they say, the right product in the right place at the right time, by making sure when the product is coming in from suppliers, the product is compliant, so it can come into the warehouse very, very quickly, be put away into locations quickly, and picked and go out through the door. If you're a brand working with multiple different retailers, in the UK we have retailers where may have 52 different retailers who all have different requirements on how the goods need to be labelled, how they need to be presented, what box size they need to be in, and adhering to those solutions to get your products on sale within those retailers' warehouses is key. Making sure that product is available in the right place at the right time. We're also talking about how to establish end-to-end transparency. Data is key in everything you do throughout for the supply chain. You need to make sure you're capturing the data at the front end, whether it be from the manufacturers for information around the sustainability to capture it, to put in for your waste information, but also capturing all the data of where the goods were manufactured, the CO, all the way through, so you can capture that from point of posting your purchase order, receipt into the warehouse, and you need to have visibility through both your WMS and through your purchase order management system. And then, like we're talking about, right product, right place, right time. Like someone said, with supply chains becoming more complicated, with not only the e-commerce, with retail, with now D2C and marketplace solutions, you've got to make sure you've got the product available, whether it be from returns, whether it's for new product that's coming in, so it's available to sell as quickly as we possibly can get it on sale.
So looking again at the percentages of the challenges, and we notice that it all starts and it all can get better with the pre-retail and compliance which is well done before any order is placed on your store on your web shop. And number one is deliveries. Number two is quality. And number three is labeling. So all those actions which actually happen before a product is placed into your web shop or is in the point of sale. That's where it really begins, where we can correctify and add speed to market or add or be compliant and for you to be compliant. So that's where basically the story starts if you look at an end-to-end supply chain setup.
So with the biggest issues around pre-retail compliance, we're talking before about specific retailers having specific requirements to deliver in. What we find is that if there is a lot of penalties that can be incurred, some of the retailers, historically not so much now, have used non-compliance as a way of charging money to brands and to make sure additional revenues going through. And that could be anything from the labels placed in the incorrect place on the box, on the wrong location on the item, it's not in the correct poly bag, all different excuses. Even with the delivery, is the delivery late? Is it slightly overhanging on the pallet? Is the pallet not wrapped properly? Is the pallet at the wrong tie height? All of these areas need to make sure that when you are doing that compliance up front, it's done completely in line with the supplier's compliance manual. As a business, what we do, and we'll touch on it a little bit more on some of the slides going through, is we try and automate as much as this we can. We build those supplier compliance details into our systems so that we're printing the correct labels on demand, we're printing the right box-in labels. As warehouses are becoming more and more automated, it's key that when that product arrives at the destination, that warehouse can ingest it as quickly as possible. Exactly like we were saying before, it needs to be speed to market, receipted in as quickly as possible, into a pick location, on sale as quickly as it can, therefore allowing the brands to be able to place repeat purchase orders so you can get more stock in and send them back through, and it also puts you yourself as a brand in a strong position with those retailers. 20% of businesses has lost additional business with retailers because they can't do the compliance properly. So making sure you cover those compliance and being a brand or a supplier of choice is key in making sure that you're getting your products on sale.
Optimize inbound, outbound product availability. So what are the opportunities to actually improve efficiencies and time to market? One is very clear, a correct labeling. Yeah? It sounds easy, but in various existing setups, labeling is an issue, or wrong labeling can lead to issues. Packaging and repackaging, that's something we experience very often, that suppliers to brands are not complying with the package requirements or packaging requirements. And that's where we then have to step in to comply with that. And that's something which has always been in transport. If you consolidate, you save money and you save time. It also sounds very simple again, but it just makes sense. And looking at brands, they will have multiple suppliers, which we would then consolidate, and we would save money, but also save time. And well, yeah, there's less handling if you consolidate shipments and deliver all in one batch. Last but not least is the quality and compliance control that we actually take great care to monitor based on certain KPIs, that we constantly meet those requirements of the brand, which is set by the brand or from the supplier. And any QBR on that will always now have 1 or 2 pages just covering the KPIs and how much of that has actually been achieved. So I think those are 3 or 4 really quick opportunities to improve that and to set it up without having redesigning supply chains overall.
And I think just touching on one of those, on the consolidated transport solutions, it's become quite clear today in conversations we've had with multiple different retailers that there is a real issue around inbound compliance and making sure when suppliers are delivering into them that they end up with a goods in area within the warehouse that is full of stock that can't be receipted into the warehouse because it's not been labelled properly. So people are now looking at different solutions of supplier compliance, or as we call it, a nominated carrier scheme, where we can go out and we can collect from multiple different suppliers. So we work with several different brands within the UK where we go and collect from 1,000 different suppliers, bring that stock back into our warehouse, and there will to be a couple of different streams. There'll be compliant stock that will come in, and we will do a physical check just to make sure it is what it says it is on the box. The right labelling is on the box, so when it does go in, like we say, it can go straight through the automation. But then you also have a reprocessing stream to say, okay, certain suppliers will not pay out the money for additional printers for specific labels if a customer needs specific labels. They also don't want to fork out for a load of additional packaging. We can take that stock in, we make it compliant, and instead of then a retailer or having 1,000 different suppliers delivering in, and that may be a full load, it may be a DPD driver or a DHL driver turning up with 2 or 3 cartons, or it may well be 4 or 5 pallets. You've got then multiple different vehicles that are turning up throughout the day through a limited number of doors in some locations that will have to then start to block up your inbound areas, so you can't process that stock through very, very quickly. Having a consolidated transport solution or a nominated carrier scheme will allow you to filter that through somebody who pulls all that details together, make sure everything is compliant, is labelled correctly, loaded onto a number of vehicles, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is based on the volumes, that are then delivered straight into the retailer's doors and straight in on sale as quickly as possible.
And it's super interesting to during a mapping session at any warehouse is to see the dwell time that actually uncompliant cargo will have arriving into, let's say, an automated warehouse. And if you look at that dwell time, it's one of the clear indicators that something is not right. And if that dwell time can make up to 20 to 40% more time which is needed before actually the product is on the market or on the web page. So that's something, a very simple indicator which shows is everything compliant or not.
When you put something like this in place, we did it for a large retailer, I won't name them, but we did it for a very large retailer who, when they opened their new DC, their inbound was going through 17 different doors. From thousands of different suppliers, and a lot of that stock was coming through, like I say, snarled up in the inbound area. Within 2 weeks of us having put in the solution in place for them, we got it going down compliant through 2 doors. So 90% of their inbound will now go through 2 doors. So when you put this solution in place and you move that compliance upstream, it takes away a lot of the headaches when it actually reaches the DC.
So a further necessity is to establish a true end-to-end transparency on the supply chain, on SKU level, on article level. That's a method of finding out which is best. And there are several opportunities to ensure that level of transparency is reached. One is to create a control tower view, that every movement, every article, every SKU is actually monitored from source up to the final delivery in the final point of sale or the DC or the web shop. Of course, it has to be ensured that all data is accessible. So we all have that together with the brands and retailers, a massive data lake. If we're not releasing that knowledge from that data and making it visible and accessible to everyone involved in those supply chains, that's a big must that we have to change that, because there's so much news, so much clarity in the data where we can really change things. Understand product placement within the supply chain and that goes with what we like to do is mapping sessions with our clients or with our prospects, is to really map out, to understand where we can actually take an effect on. And then we can really introduce the measures to meet those opportunities to establish an end-to-end transparency.
And I think it's also giving the retailer at the end the opportunity to place that product where they actually need that product, whether it's going to go into a different DC. Some people ask the question, can you do this for a multiple DC retailer? Of course you can. What you do is you get the suppliers that may only want to deliver in one purchase order, but that purchase order needs to be split out to 3 different destinations. And we do that for one company where it's going, you've got a UK DC, you've got an EU DC and a US DC. The customer only wants to deliver in one purchase order. They don't want to be delivering in 3 different orders. When that then gets dropped in, we could do the split. You split it, you label it, you do everything you need to go to other final destinations. But both the retailer and the brands want to know where their stock is at any one point. So giving them that visibility, they then understand where it is in the supply chain, where it's then going to go out to. The retailer at the same time will also want to know where they're going to put that product within their supply chain. Is it going for a pure play solution? Is it going to go into store? Does it need to have a different location of when it goes in? Some people, when we'll send stock in, we'll send stock when we have to take it out of the box, put it on a hanger, steam it, tag it, security tag it, ready so it goes in and can go straight into a storefront. But they may also have stock that is just ready to just be sent straight in because they want to go to an e-com pick phase, so it needs to stay in the bag. So it's very much understanding of how you're putting that product in the right place, understanding how they want it to be presented. And when we're talking right place, it could be location, or it could also be, like I say, an area within that warehouse. We were saying before about it also allows you to enable new marketplaces fulfillment. Marketplace fulfillment is becoming more and more important moving forward. And it's being able to do marketplace fulfillment for multiple different marketplaces from one location and distributing. And that's both, I think, UK, Europe, globally as well. Fulfillment from returns is the next big step of where we're seeing movement of making sure that you've got products can be refilled from your returns as quickly as possible. And that is also not but just from returns. If you've got an order that's coming in for an item that's sat in returns, you don't want to have to pick that item, put it back into a pickable location with the rest of the stock to then fulfill that return order. If you've got a return that's come back in and you've got an order that's sat in the order well for that item, you want to be picking it from the point as a return, it's hit your returns desk, putting a label on it and sending it straight back out to a customer. Also being able to fulfill returns within country as well. So
I think that's exactly one of the big points is why we have a return, which is an item returned in Spain. Why do we ship it back to Germany for it to be resent back to Spain? Because exactly that item was bought in Spain again. So it's again lots of opportunities to have a forward stock deployment based on bestsellers or based on the returns and fulfill from those returns in the same country it was triggered. And I think that's something really worth looking into.
and that is especially from a point of view both of speed of product to market, but also from a sustainability element. You don't want to be shipping products all around the world just for the sake of moving it back to the original DC it was fulfilled from. It needs to be fulfilled locally, so you're cutting down on your CO2 emissions. We'll move on. So we're kind of talking around a lot of different solutions here of how we could do it, but achieving cost reduction at the same time as meeting sustainability targets. We've talked around having a consolidated transport solution. When you're filtering all the products into one location and then delivering them on one vehicle, you're taking vehicles off the road, you're cutting down on the CO2, and it also gives you more control over when those stock is going in. A big area that we're seeing more and more, we touched on again a little bit around with EPR, is improving the salvage rates of your returns. Returns has always been one of the dark areas of logistics for many years now, and people don't want to get involved in returns, but people are now seeing how much inventory and money is tied up in that returns inventory, and making sure, both from a legislative point of view, but from a financial point of view, it's key to deal with those returns quickly and efficiently as possible. And that will be when items come back in. We do grading on it, so you're grading it at grade A, grade B, grade C. If it's grade A, it can go back in stock as quickly as possible. If it's grade B, they're the key ones that you need to be doing something with, doing some salvage on it, doing spot cleaning, doing sewing, doing some reworks, doing some cannibalization of taking wheels off of prams to put onto another pram that comes back in. Lots of different things you can do to returns. The amount of products that we see that go out in branded packaging for electrical items, for instance, that when they come back in, people go, well, I've not got the branded packaging to put it back into, so how can I sell it as a grade A product? At the end of the day, if it's going out as an e-commerce order, a lot of time the consumer at the end doesn't know what the original box looks like. If you're reboxing it into a plain brown box and you're putting a label on the outside and says this is the details of the product, when they receive it, as long as the product's in perfectly good condition, they're not going to get upset that they've not got an unbranded box. So it's looking at all those different ways of how you can handle those returns and making sure you maximize the revenue out of it. Get as much back into grade A. If it can't, and it's got to be grade B, look at how you sell that. Do you work it through a marketplace with somebody like an eBay? Do you set up your own? We work with a company that sells their electrical items as nearly news, and they sell it through as 70% of the RRP. And then if it isn't salvageable, what do you do with it then? There is still value within that product. It's then how you then recycle it, whether it can go back, we go back to fabrics, if it's a monoscrew fabric and it can be then recycled back to its original parts and put back into the beginning of the supply chain to be used in manufacturing again, that's key. If it's not, and it could be used and given to a charity, so at least a charity can use it. It's making sure that you both ethically and financially looking after those products when they come back in.
And of course, as always, technology has to be our friend. So we need to have solutions which drive adherence and really adherence to compliance, and also mitigate all risks along the supply chain or in that certain area. And I think we're all living in a very digitalized world, but in logistics there are still some gaps which good, clever startups are trying to fill. We just have to be constantly scanning the market to identify technology which will actually enhance that idea and that solution.
And like we said, we go back to the first bit we said around the supply chain is all about data management. Having that data available to you at the touch of a button, visibility through a portal. But now going back to the sustainability element, you need that data to fulfill your sustainability goals. You need that data from your suppliers at the front end to say, what am I putting into the market? What's the waste element? What's the plastic? What's the paper? What's the cardboard? What's the fabric that I'm putting in? What's the weight of it? So you can track all that data from right at the front end to now reporting it at the back end into your sustainability goals. Having the ability to pull that out into good BI, you need it, and having that available at the touch of a button is key moving forward. So having that transparency right from point of order right the way through to point of destruction. We, through our wider group with Reconomy, we have a lot of information that we pull through from a waste management perspective that looks at nothing to landfill. It's a unique piece of tech that is market leading, that we will be able to report back down to, let's say for different store networks, you can pinpoint down to an individual store based on the waste that they're generating, what they go into landfill, and you can then pinpoint and work with those different stores to improve. There is also a new piece of tech, which again, if anyone's interested, please come and see us at the stand, that actually monitors where you are. And there's a piece of news actually that's come out today about the 1.5 degrees, that we're actually operating nowhere near where we should be from 1.5 to 2.5 degrees. This tech will show you exactly where you're sitting on that journey and provide that information back to you to allow you to make those changes within your supply chain to improve. That, I think, covers it. We're not going to go on to our last two slides, but we're more than welcome to share it. So hope that was informative for you. And if you've got any questions, I think Sophie's going to come join us.
Yes, I think I'll take the liberty to ask you the first question. I think it's really cool how you've thought about circularity in the supply chain. I think that's something that a lot of people are struggling with. And I mean, it's not just retailers that are struggling with this, but it all comes from customers wanting to know how something works and why something is done a certain way. I think it's really great that we all have all this drive as us together, but at the same time, for so many of us, this whole EPR landscape is kind of a minefield, and we don't quite know where to go and what to do. So could you maybe elaborate on how would one navigate that?
Yeah, it's working with partners, and it's not a sales pitch, but it is at the same point. It's working with partners who do that as a day-to-day job. We have somebody in our business, Amy, who is our EPR director, who solely looks after EPR, is up to date with all the current information, the current legislative changes in all the different countries. We do webinars through Valpak, through Reconomy. So I would say sign up for those webinars. Keep very close to the people within your sustainability teams to understand how that's changing, because it is changing daily. So every time new news comes out, make sure you're linked up with a consortium or a PRO in certain countries that you can deal with. Work with people like ourselves, and that will get you to the place you need to learn. And then it's working with sustainability teams to start putting things in place to future-proof yourself as a business.
And you mentioned this change, and that triggered me because we often talk about disruption in supply chains, and a lot of retailers struggle with these ever-changing landscapes and disruptions. How do you support your retailers that work with you on navigating those ever-changing and continuous disruptions?
There's some ideas which we already are actually speaking with our clients and potential clients. There's so many ideas how to come to that. There's so many different methods. And I just think what Stuart said is super important. There has to be a focus on both sides. So if both sides are really looking into the disruptions or looking how to maybe mitigate future disruptions and how to have workarounds in place for anything that hits that supply chain is essential. So what we like to do is more of a really not a sales pitch, as you said, Stuart. It's more of a consultative topic where we really look at the supply chain and do a complete mapping of it. And that now includes specialist teams looking at sustainability, looking at other different areas. So it's working very closely, and it has to be interdisciplinary. So we have to not only speak about with logistics and transport guys, but it has to be everyone along that supply chain. And then it really makes sense.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to just say is that we're talking around sustainability and how to try and get to where you need to be at. Is Europe ready to go full sustainability, to have solutions in place? No, it's not. There's a lot of changes that still need to be made, a lot of investment that still needs to be made across from a recycling perspective. But it's working with some of the customers at the moment that we work with to look at what can you do with those. Let's say that, again, I'm going back to textiles because it's quite heavily where we were, but what do you do with those end-of-line textiles? If you can't be used, how can you recycle them? What can you recycle them into? There are companies out there that can't do the scalable volume to take in huge amounts of product at the moment, but people are making these into bedding, automotive filling for the chairs, but they're also then turning shop fitting, refabric textiles into shop fittings. So it's looking at all these different ideas of what you can do for the supply chain, and having a consultative approach is exactly that. It's sitting down and talking and understanding. It's changing every day.
Are there any questions from the audience? If you could raise your hand, then we'll get a microphone to you.
That's good. We covered everything.
Yes.
No, I still have a question. Because you mentioned control towers and the benefit that control towers give. And I think we see that a lot of companies that do have control towers in place do have that visibility often end to end. But at the same time, there's quite a large group of not just retailers that really struggle with control towers and implementing control towers, although they know that it's going to bring them value. What tip would you have to those companies that struggle with implementing control towers?
You have to have and allow full transparency. So it's not only that you want to do it, you really have to have a dedicated team working on that, because there will be several different factors and areas which have to work and align to actually deliver visibility. So it's having an open approach. And one thing is really new is to have partnerships also amongst LSPs. So it's not the us, them, they, it has to be us. And if we then seek partnerships with maybe a competitor a year ago, today a partnership could mean good for the retail or for the brand, for the retailer. So I think transparency and the willingness to really do something, then you can really start erecting a control tower which has an effect.
I think that a lot of the retailers have the data.
Yeah.
But they have too much data because they don't know what to do with it. And I think you're right. It's just finding how to put that solution in place. It may be working with external partners, with software providers that can provide an additional piece of software to add it on that they again can integrate with their systems. We know that a lot of retailers work on quite old, archaic systems with green screens. I think some of them still operate on as well. But it's looking at how you can use that data and look at external software to integrate the two. But don't be afraid to share that data with, like Simon says, across multiple different partners. At the end of the day, it's only going to help you in the long run.
Yeah.
And then maybe to hit on another topic that you talked about around the speed to market, which I think is something that touches a lot of people's lives and so on. You mentioned that, investing in various aspects of your solution would enable that. From your perspective, what would make the key difference where should a retailer invest in when they're thinking about increasing their speed to market?
I think data availability, data transparency, they have to open up. They have to show us their backbone as well to say, these are my suppliers, this is my current setup. So it's basically a mixture. I can't pinpoint it on one topic. But I think transparency amongst partners is up there, because if everyone is open and willing to show, then we can get something done. And the getting into the data lake, that's really key.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Otherwise, I'll ask you both the same question. It's the final question. What is the dream for advanced supply chain in 5 years from now?
To have somebody else presenting.
Yes, yes.
No. For us, I think it's developing those sustainability solutions as a wider group with the economy and how we're pushing that through from the waste side of things. Growth for us, advanced supply chain across Europe. We've opened our first site in Germany 7 months ago. We've got growth plans across the whole of Europe and in the US over the next 5 years. So for me, it's the growth of the business, focusing on the key strengths of what we do, of the sustainability elements, the pre-retailing and returns. And it's kind of that growth with those for me.
Anything to add, Simon?
Yeah, for me, it was one of the main reasons I joined Advance was economy, that I was not doing the usual LSP job, but I'm surrounded by great companies who have great solutions in different segments, which all have an effect on the supply chain. And my dream really would be to market that even further, to generate growth, because at the end of the day, it will be good for the retailers, for the brands, and for our environment. So my dream is to really have a sustainable solution, a full end-to-end sustainable solution.
Thank you so much both for sharing your insights with all of us. It was great to learn more about how we can also think more circular within the end-to-end supply chain. And wow, I'm getting attacked by a fly. At this point, I think it's the end of today's session. We will have the award ceremony shortly, so be there. And it was so nice to interact with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.